Welcome back to the channel. You're rolling with me in the G, and I was excited because I was able to take it out and make a run. At least that's what I thought. As most of you know, nothing for me goes as planned. So unfortunately, as I started to take this run, the dreaded check engine light came on. Now I will say that when I fired up the G, I did notice it sounded like a slight misfire at idle. It clears up when I drive it, but nonetheless, all of you know, misfires are no good and oftentimes a pain to chase. So everyone has their own strategy of how to do it, but we'll take a look at all that stuff and see how it goes. For me, oftentimes, I usually want to start with ignition and then move to fuel, but whatever works for you. So I'm going to take it back to the shop, and just for demonstration purposes, I'll just go ahead and use an auto X-ray. And the reason why is it's a much more affordable alternative versus the Leonardo. For those of you that want to diagnose on your own, that's the way to go. If you want to get deeper into it, then something like the Leonardo is probably worth the investment. But in any case, we need to dive in and see exactly what happened. So let's go back to the shop. Because the G is detecting a misfire, I'm going to go on the ignition side. Now what I'm going to base that on is because I can barely detect it at idle. If it was a major misfire, or if by any chance under full tilt I was getting any sort of detonation that would make me suspect it's leaning out, I would look at fuel as well. There's so many factors in all these cars, you could go crazy. So you got to start somewhere. But for me, just going direct to the point, it has a slight misfire at idle. The computers are picking up that it's got a misfire. Therefore, I'm just going to start with the spark plugs. The rough process of the spark plugs is typically you have to lay over either the fender or the engine, and it's quite uncomfortable. Now, it's not the hardest job ever, but it is more difficult for me as I get older, and I'm going to be in there anyway, where time is very valuable to me. So if I'm going to go in, I'm going to go ahead and change the coils as well. It's difficult to know how much your power is increasing without bench testing and taking a whole lot of time and energy. As we move on here and we talk about coils, there's a lot of information behind them and a lot of theories and strategies behind the whole ignition system. It really comes down to the race cars when you're running some sort of either MSD or CDI, all these different ignition amplifiers. People do different things, of course, because they feel they have more spark energy, which means they can run more gap. Now, just running an updated coil, it's difficult to know how much your power is increasing without bench testing and taking a whole lot of time and energy. The other way would be the practical way, and that would be, of course, increasing the gap, putting it in the car, running it, and just keep increasing the gap until you get a misfire. That takes a whole lot of time and energy that I personally am not willing to do. But if you're up for it, by all means. I'm just going to run with 32 thou, very close to the gap that the IK24s come with. Now, the theory behind it is, for those of you that are wondering, of course, the gap is where the spark comes and ignites your fuel mixture. The real question is, how much are you going to burn? And when I say that, I mean because you could spend all this time and energy, but theoretically, if you're not going to burn any more of the air fuel mixture than you would with, let's say, just your factory ignition, you're really not gaining anything. So going back to ignition amplifiers, a lot of them are very important and they work amazing when you have higher cylinder pressures, especially under forced induction. That's a big reason they exist, is because a lot of times ignition will fall out. So if you take a factory car and let's say whatever percent of the fuel mixture you're burning, because it's different for every engine, and I honestly have no idea what the G's is, or any of my other cars for that matter, except for the race cars, of course. If you're not going to burn anymore, it's not going to matter, because you're still not going to make any more power. If you're going to burn more of the mixture and create a bigger explosion, you'll create more power. So therefore, you want to think about that, because it's a lot of time and energy, and the gains may be insignificant. And even if you were to gain, because you're not increasing your compression ratio, your fuel, your air, your power would most likely be fairly minimal. But if that's what you want to do, by all means, go for it. So you can see right here the nice shiny new coil. So I've been told by reliable sources that pulling the coils on the G can be really, really rough on the hands. And as you can see, my hands are already pretty torn up. So I got the recommendation to possibly get a tool that would assist me to pull the coils. And amazingly enough, I was able to find that tool in many different places. You can see down below where I put the part number. You can get it on eBay, Amazon, and they're all very affordable. I chose to go the Amazon route, and let me show you why. If you take a look at this, since I was going to buy this tool anyway for the G coils, I figured I should just buy the whole set. That way, in case I ran into a job that I needed the other tools, I was set to go. And the price for that tool set was around $22. So I really don't think I could go wrong just by getting the whole set. It looks like I'm gonna have to pull the carbon fiber trim panel on the driver's side. That'll allow me to see what's going on there, but clearance looks very tight to the coil cover on that side. By my count, it looks like the side panel has 3 Torx 25 and 1 Torx 30 screw in the back corner. And then there is this bolt. That bolt right there was used to hold the additional gas strut for my rear hatch before I changed it to the lightweight carbon fiber model, so I only need a single on the passenger side. But I'll go ahead and pull that out to allow me to pull the carbon panel off. Next, I'm going to move to pull the coil covers off, and you can get those 2 bolts out with a 4mm Allen. Go ahead and start by pulling off the plugs and then use my new tool to pull the coils out. Over the years, I've had some rough time getting plastic connectors off, especially on the engine compartment, because they get just baked on. So a tip I will pass on is these. These tools are for actually removing interior pieces, but they work great to wedge in between the coil and the connector. So as soon as you pull back the lock tab, you're able to push this in and hopefully not break anything. Straightforward, no major problems. The only thing I'll mention is the second coil back from the firewall has a clearance issue. So to get that coil out, not a big issue. You just need to pull the bolt off of the coolant reservoir. You can use a 13mm socket, and then you can just shift the reservoir over to make room for the coil. Close to the firewall, there's an alignment pin that holds it in place. I've got the plugs out on the passenger side cylinder head, and I'm pretty shocked this car runs rich, and always the spark plugs tell the story. So if you want to look at your tune beyond anything, it's great to use O2 sensors, EGTs, but what's really happening in the cylinder, the story is always on the spark plug. But take a look at some of this stuff that's kind of interesting. When you look at this, the first thing is that these are very, very dark. You can see how rich it's running. And also, for those of you that don't know, usually you count the threads on the spark plug to see what type of heat you're running. Typically on the 7, I'd look for 6 or 7 threads. The heat looks about right and fairly consistent. That kind of tells the story, except for the rear cylinder. Unfortunately, this spark plug was only put in hand tight. I've never changed the plug since I've had the car. So you can see that oil was actually traveling up the threads and came up the body of the spark plug. That just spells out bad times. As my dad was quick to point out, that also could attribute to the misfire, because as we talked about the plugs, and I explained to use a little bit of never sees because the spark plug won't be able to ground. It's the same principle here. With the plugs being all wet, that plug could have been the misfire problem. Once the plugs are out, another thing I look for is consistency, that all the plugs look the same. If the plugs look different, such as the plug in the rear hole, there's definitely a problem, which could help you isolate and find out what's going faster. Now, usually, I'm used to seeing the porcelain being white. Even in the 7, which runs very rich, this is definitely on the line. But if you look down in that valley and use light with a magnifying glass, if you see speckling, that is an indication that you have detonation. That is bad times, and you would definitely want to address that. Now, originally, I guess the G came with Champions. I have not changed the plugs on this car, and as you know, I don't have a ton of miles or usage on it. From what I've read, the upgrade plugs are Denso Iridium IK24. Luckily for me, that is the same plug I run on the X. If it's good enough for the X, I'm pretty sure it's good enough for the G. Denso also offers an Iridium race plug, but I don't feel that's necessary for my car. If I was racing it, I might think differently about that. Now what I'll do is I'll take the coils and compare them side by side, because I've been doing this too long to just trust that the part number and everything is right. But after taking a visual, the coils look the same, which is great, and it looks like I just need to transfer the seal over to the new coil. Now, I like dielectric grease because I don't like misfires, but of course it's up to you. For the small investment, you could just put it in the boot where the tip of the spark plug goes, and that of course will lend you a helping hand against the fight against misfires. Now I'm ready to send the coils down, and I'm going to use a new tool to push it down. I'm sure most of you are much stronger than me, so it wouldn't be a problem, but for me I get a lot of leverage using that tool, which makes it a lot easier. I'm sure some of you noticed that the coil wouldn't go down. I was fighting with it, and then it occurred to me that maybe there was a redesign, so I looked a lot closer, and it would appear that I am not to use the seal on the original coils because these are updates. They no longer use them, so after I removed those, I was able to go down. Other than that, the process was pretty straightforward. The last step, of course, is to hook up the clips. When you push the clips in, you want to listen for the click. If you don't get the click, then I would advise trying to pull them back. The last thing you want is for one of those connectors to come loose and you develop a misfire. And believe it or not, I've seen it happen because they don't want any moisture to enter the connector. Therefore, you gotta give it a good push to get it to lock. Now, with all the new plugs in and the new coils in, all I have to do is reposition the coolant reservoir, send the bolt down to mount it, and after that, put the coil cover back on. Getting the spark plugs and coils out on the driver's side is the same process as the passenger side, with one exception, and that is the frame rail is in the way to get everything out. So then what you want to do is go ahead and remove all the hardware, which I believe is 5 bolts from what I can see it looks like, and you can use a 13mm socket. You'll remove that hardware, and that way that frame piece will come out, giving you the clearance to of course pull the coil cover, coils, and spark plugs. Now that everything's put back together, it's time to put the frame rail piece back in. The only thing I'll mention is that I would advise bolting up the 2 bolts into the firewall first, then doing the rear section. That way you won't have any load on the firewall as you come down. Well, there you have it. New plugs, new coils. The check engine light stayed off, and it's not giving me this warning that there's something wrong with all cylinders. So I'm a happy camper. Time to take the G out for a run, enjoy the rest of my day. I hope all of you have a great weekend. See you next time.